All right, y'all. I think this is my fifth attempt at trying to record this. And I thought the last one was really good, but then I realized at some point that I had turned off the recording. So I'm going to do this again. And I hope it's as good as the last one. Alrighty, we are studying trigonometry now, pretty much for the rest of the school year. You've already studied trigonometry. You studied right triangle trig, which was SOHCAHTOA, sine is opposite of her hypotenuse, etc. Don't worry, if you don't remember that, we will be reviewing it in a couple of weeks. But this is a whole unit on trig, so it's going to be a lot more than just right triangles. It's actually all going to be studied on a circle. So the first thing we need to do is learn about angles. And there are two angles, types of angles. One is positive and one is negative, which may seem weird. So let me explain it to you. But I do want to say as a sidebar real quick, you're not going to find these notes in the content library. I'm putting it only in a video because I want everyone to watch this video. So if your friends ask you to just tell them what was in the video, please tell them they need to watch it. This stuff is so foundational that I really need to make sure everybody knows how to do it. All right, so positive versus negative angles. A positive angle has a counterclockwise rotation, which may seem weird, but that's how we do it. And a negative angle has a clockwise rotation, which, think about it, that means this goes this direction and a negative will go that direction. All right, so when you draw an angle is in standard position if its vertex is located at the origin and one ray is on the positive x-axis. The ray on the x-axis is called the initial side, like beginning, right? That's where you want to start your angle. And the other ray is called the terminal side. And think about terminal, terminating, it's finishing, it's ending. So that's where your angle ends. And if two angles are in standard position and have the same terminal side, they're called coterminal angles, which may seem weird right now, but don't worry, in just a minute, we'll go over that. All right, so the first thing we need to do is make sure you understand how to draw an angle. You'll notice that you have a separate page in your trig folder that is your homework. And the first thing you have to do on these homework problems is to draw angles. So let's make sure you understand how our quadrants are divided up so you can figure out how to put your angles. So we start here, which will be 0 degrees. And up here, you guys know, is 90. Back here is 180. Here's 270, and then once we get all the way around again, it's 360. So when you're trying to figure out where to put your angle, use these. You can write them on there if you want. Eventually, I think you won't need them, but initially, if you want to, feel free. So to draw an angle, the first thing we always need to do is to put a point at the origin and then draw our initial side, which remember is right along the x-axis. And then I need 45 degrees. So that's going to be between 0 and 90. And you know what? I'm guessing you all know what it looks like anyway. So there's my angle, but I have to include a curved arrow, which we call a directional arrow, because everyone needs to know, did you go in the clockwise direction or the counterclockwise direction? In other words, is this positive 45 or a negative angle instead? All right, so let's do 150 degrees. So we put our point on the origin. We draw our initial side. Now 150 is going to be back in the second quadrant. It's not quite as far as 180, but it is closer to 180 than it is 90, so about there is good. Now I'm not going to take off if it looks like it's a little bit off, but this isn't 90, so it shouldn't be going almost straight up. And it's not 180, so it shouldn't be almost flat. It needs to be in between there. And then don't forget your directional angle. All right, now 205, we're going to draw our vertex and our initial side. And 205 is down here, but it's not a whole lot past 180. So it's going to be about there somewhere. And we're going to draw our directional arrow. Now let's do one that's negative. Okay, so now you got to think in the opposite direction. So here we start as 90, or I mean 0, and then down here is negative 90. And now back here is still 180, but it's negative. And now up here is negative 270. And then once you get all the way around is negative 360. And so for your negative angles, you may want to draw in the or write in those numbers to help you. So negative 50 is going to be in this first quadrant. It's a little bit closer to 90 than it is 0, so that's pretty good. Oops, I'm sorry. vertex, and initial ray. All right. Then I need my directional angle, and I really need it here because this is a negative angle. All right, so here is that picture. Notice this is my initial side here because that's where I started my angle. That's my terminal side, that's where it ended. And then that red curved arrow shows me direction. So I know if it's a positive or negative angle. All right, the second thing I need you to be able to get out of this lesson is this idea of coterminal angles. Coterminal angles are going to look exactly the same. It's two angles that look exactly the same but have different measurements. Okay, how can that be that they have different measurements if they really are the same? Well, here's one idea. One goes in the positive direction, the other one goes in the negative direction. Okay, so if you notice here that the 120 and the negative 240 end in the same place, right? So if all I had was the blue arrow, I would think it was the same angle. Or if all I had was the blue angle, I wouldn't be able to tell. So that's why you have to have those directional angles. But that's where this coterminal angle idea comes in. They look just the same, but they have different measurements because maybe you went different directions. Okay, so here I went 120 in one direction, I went 240 in the other direction, and so I end up at the same place. Notice those two angles add up to 360, right? So how do I figure out how much I have to go in the negative direction if all I know is the positive? Well, if I have the 120 and I know that I want to have a negative angle that goes the rest of the way around the 360, then do your subtraction 120 minus 360 because that will give you the negative. If you do 360 minus 120, yes, it will tell you how much. It will give you the 240, but it won't remind you that it's negative. So that means I can take my given angle, and I can subtract 360 and get a negative coterminal angle. All right, so that's one idea, that the two of them went different directions. The other idea is maybe my coterminal angles went the same direction, but maybe instead of doing 120, I first went all the way around 360, and then I went my 120. So in other words, I went my 120, and then I went 360 more. So that would be 480. And those would be coterminal angles also. And notice those are both positive, 120 and 480. Sometimes you want them to both be positive, not one positive, one negative. All right. So then if I could do that in the positive direction, I could also do it in the negative direction. I could have gone around 360 in the negative direction and then another 240. So I could have done negative 360 plus negative 240 and gotten negative 600. And those are also coterminal angles. So don't worry, I'm going to show you here on this next page in a little more detail how to find those coterminal angles. So let's practice. This is what your homework looks like. Please notice there are three things you're supposed to do. You're supposed to draw the angle, find a positive coterminal and a negative coterminal. So here's my angle, 100 degrees. I put my vertex, I draw my initial side. That's a little bit past 90, so there's my angle. Put in my directional arrow. First part done. All right, positive coterminal angle. So as I said, we could go 100, but then we could go all the way around again, or maybe you want to think about going all the way around first, however you want to think of it. But we could do 100 plus another 360, and 460 would give us a coterminal angle, but it's also positive. The initial angle was positive, this one is positive. And notice how I got it? I added 360. If I want positive coterminal angles, I'm going to add 360. All right, now I want the negative. So remember up above, I showed you that I could take that first one and I could subtract 360 from it. And it's good to do the subtraction because that ensures you get a negative number and you don't forget to put a negative sign on there. Sometimes kids do 360 minus 100 and just wrote 260 on the blank, but that's not a negative number. So you got to make sure that you do minus 360. All right, let's do another angle. 60 degrees. Initial point, initial ray. 60 degrees is about here, draw in my directional arrow. To find a positive coterminal, I take 60 and I add 360 because that would be the effect of going all the way around one time and then the 60 again. So that gives me 420 degrees. To get my negative, I can go 60 minus 360, and that will give me negative 300 degrees. That rule always works. To find a positive coterminal angle, you add 360 to your original angle, regardless of what your original angle is. Now, sometimes you might have to add more than one time. You might have to add 360 and then add 360 again. And you keep adding 360 until you get a positive number. And then also, it works to do the negative the same way. Take your original angle, subtract 360, and keep subtracting 360 until you get a negative number. All right, so let's try another angle. Let's try 700 degrees. Oh my, what do we do with 700 degrees? Well, we can always start it. All right, now I know I'm only going to get to 360 if I go around once, so I need to do that. Now, how much is left? Well, I need to do 700 minus 360 to see how much is left, and that is 340. So after I've gone around once, I still need to go 340 degrees again, which is really almost all the way around. Okay, so notice I've actually started with that directional angle because it helps me keep track of where I need to go. And then I can draw in my terminal ray. Okay, put arrows on my directional arrow or arrowhead on my directional arrow, and I've got it. So let me go through that one again. I'm going to erase it and walk you through it again. All right, so I started here, and I'm going to switch colors. To help me, because this is a big number, I'm going to go ahead and start drawing my directional arrow. And so one time around is 360, but I still need to go 340 more. So I need to go to about there. And so my initial ray needs to, or excuse my terminal ray needs to go to that place where my blue arrow stopped. Okay, so now it's really hard to tell that this isn't just a negative 20 degrees, except for that blue arrow. The blue arrow is telling me go all the way around 360 and then go 340 more. Except that I just did the whole thing. No, I'm good. Sorry. It's early in the morning. I was thinking I did it backwards. All right. So a positive coterminal angle. I can take 700 and I can add 360. So that gives me 1060. But when I subtract 360, that gives me 340. That's not a negative number. So I need to subtract again. And that gives me negative 20. Okay. So see, you got to keep subtracting 360 until you get a negative. Alrighty, now we've got one negative angle what we're going to draw. We're going to draw negative 35. So we're going to start with our vertex and our initial ray. And this time, I know that I can do what I did before if I want to with the blue, if that helps you, especially when they get bigger, it might. I'm going to go, this is 90, this is 180, this is 270. So I need to stop somewhere about there. So that's where I'm going to need to have my terminal side go. It's going to need to go just along that blue arrow. So the blue arrow helped me because I could go 90, 180, 270, and then a little bit more. Actually, this isn't a great picture. Probably should be a little bit lower. But again, like I said, as long as you are close, I'm all right with it. So this is an example of where it's not exact, but I would give you credit for that. All right, so I can tell it's a negative angle because I went clockwise, okay? And otherwise, it really looks like just a 15-degree angle. So my positive coterminal, I take my negative 345, because remember, you take the original angle, whatever it is, and you add 360. And so that just gives me 15. I only had to add 360 one time, but I may have to add it again and again until I get a positive number. And then I will take 345 and subtract 360 to get my negative, which is 507, negative 705. Okay, so that is what you're going to need to do on your homework. Now, if you noticed in the bulletin, I am going to check one of them, one random problem. If it's wrong, I'll go and look for another one that's right. So do your best on them, but if you get one or two wrong, it shouldn't affect your grade really, because if it's only one or two, I'll look around until I find one that is correct. But don't get only one of them right, because that will not be enough to get you the points. If only one of them is right, I'm sorry. But if only one or two of them are wrong, that's great. All right, so we will continue with this whole process. Please let me know if you have any questions. And if you would like to do a Zoom, I would be happy and we could talk and work through problems. Or if you want, I can just help you individually on your OneNote. So just reach out. Love you guys. Miss you. Bye.